Do you remember this picture? It was among the most iconic ones of 2021. A massive container got stuck in the Suez Canal. For 6 days, no ship could pass. The losses ran up to billions of dollars. Back then, many experts called for an alternative, or at least a backup to the Suez Canal. Well, Russia and Iran believe they have found one. On Wednesday, both countries signed a railway agreement worth around $1.6 billion. The plan is to link two Iranian cities, Rasht on the Caspian Sea and Astara on the Azerbaijan border. The route will be 162 kilometers long. It is expected to be completed in 4 years. Both Iran and Russia are betting big on this project. Senior leaders from both countries oversaw the signing. Vladimir Putin and Ibrahim Raisi, the two presidents, joined in virtually. Here's what the Russian president said.
The goods transfer via this corridor will have significant competitive advantages. For example, the goods delivery from St. Petersburg to, let's say, Mumbai will take about 10 days. In comparison, the delivery through traditional ways will take about 45 days.
There's a reason why Putin used the example of Mumbai, because this railway isn't a standalone project. It's part of a bigger idea, the International North-South Transport Corridor. It was first proposed in the year 2002. Iran, Russia and India were the moving forces. The idea is simple, yet grand. Create a 7,200-kilometer long corridor, 7,200 kilometers. It will link the Indian Ocean to the Persian Gulf to the Caspian Sea to Russia, and from there to Northern Europe. It's a mix of everything, really. Shipping lanes, roads, railways. The plan is to get the goods to ports on the Persian Gulf, and from there, the ships take over. But how will this rival the Suez Canal? Because right now, it's the only route from Europe to Asia. This map should give you an idea. The starting and end points are the same, but the route is different. If successful, it will be great news for global trade, but getting there will be hard. The Suez makes up 12% of global trade. It has the head start of more than half a century. Plus, Russia and Iran face massive sanctions. Iran for its nuclear program, Russia for invading Ukraine. So building such a massive network is going to be tough, which is why this project hasn't really taken off yet. Some parts of this corridor have been built, but rivaling the Suez Canal is a long way off. But for the moment, let's keep the economics aside. What does this railway deal mean politically, strategically? It's a sign of how far Russia-Iran relations have come. During the Second World War, the Soviets invaded Iran. The Soviets were an occupying power for nearly 5 years in Iran, but today there are no hard feelings, it seems. In fact, Russia is one of Iran's closest partners. Moscow overtook China to become the largest investor in Iran. Around $2.7 billion was invested last year. Bilateral trade is almost $5 billion. That's 20% more than in 2021. There is a defense cooperation too. Iran is expected to get Su-35 fighter jets from Russia. 24 of them will be arriving later this month. And what did Russia get in return? Reports say drones. Apparently, Iran is smuggling drones to help Russia and Ukraine. Tehran denies this, but it's a hard sell. Putin has personally invested a lot in this relationship. He visited Iran in August last year, just his second foreign trip after the invasion began. He also backed Iran's entry into the SCO, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. What explains this close strategic partnership? One reason is Western sanctions. Both countries are feeling the pinch, so why not join hands and undermine the West? Iran gets much-needed investment in weapons. Russia gets a partner in West Asia. Both sides are also supporting the same guy in Syria, President Bashar al-Assad. So basically, it's all about give and take. Iran needed new partners after the Abraham Accords. Russia needed new allies after the Ukraine invasion. The puzzle fit perfectly, and the partnership was formed. The North-South corridor could cement this relationship. But will it rival the Suez? As they say, only time will tell. Meanwhile, China is also trying to make new friends, or perhaps steal some of Russia's. What are we talking about? China is courting 5 Central Asian nations this week. It's holding a summit, the China Central Asia Summit, the first of its kind. The venue is the city of Xi'an in China, one of the most populated cities in Western China, also historically significant. At one point, Xi'an was considered the starting point of the Silk Road, the ancient trade route that connected China to Europe. It went through medieval Central Asia. It enriched everyone along the way. Xi Jinping wants to stress on that ancient connection. He wants Central Asia on board for his new Silk Road. It's called the BRI, Belt and Road Initiative. He also wants to use this opportunity to expand his sphere of influence. You see, these former Soviet republics have historically been dependent on Moscow. But now that Russia is busy in Ukraine, China wants to swoop in. Our next report has more.
There's a historic summit taking place in China, a summit between Xi Jinping and the leaders of 5 Central Asian nations. They're meeting in the western Chinese city of Xi'an. When the Central Asian leaders arrived, they were given a grand welcome. Song and dance and honor guards greeted them as they stepped off their planes. Xi Jinping didn't hold back. But why is China so invested in this summit? Because it sees a golden opportunity, a chance to strengthen partnerships while the rest of the world tries to decouple from China. The 5 nations invited are Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, and Uzbekistan. They all lie between China, Russia, and Iran, at a critical juncture between the West and the East. China has already invested billions in the region as part of its Belt and Road Initiative. That's China's plan to create an overland trade route linking it to Europe. The name and trajectory of the BRI are a nod to the ancient Silk Road. The Silk Road connected China to Europe for thousands of years. It passed through the region where the 5 Central Asian nations now lie. So it's no coincidence that the city of Xi'an was chosen for the summit.
I would like to extend a warm welcome to President Tokayev to attend the summit in Xi'an at my invitation. I'm very happy to play host to Mr. President.
Your Excellency, Mr. President, I am very happy to meet you in the ancient city of Xi'an.
Distinguished Mr. President, I am really glad to meet you in Xi'an, the start point of the ancient Silk Road and the ancient city with historic significance. We are looking forward to the China-Central Asia Summit to be held tomorrow.
Xi is meeting the Central Asian leaders individually today. Tomorrow there will be a joint summit. China is expected to pledge higher investment in Central Asia, in the railways and natural gas sectors. There are also talks about reducing trade barriers and pledges of everlasting friendship.
The two sides should vigorously carry forward the traditional friendship, firmly support each other, deepen mutually beneficial cooperation, jointly pursue development and rejuvenation, and build a China-Kazakhstan community with a shared future featuring everlasting friendship, strong mutual trust, and solidarity.
This may not go down well with Russia. You see, all 5 nations that China has invited are former Soviet states. They became independent after the fall of the USSR, and they've remained in Russia's sphere of influence. Now that may be changing. Russia is busy with the war in Ukraine, and these countries are stepping out of its shadow. Kazakhstan has refused to recognize Russia's annexation of Ukrainian regions. Tajikistan has demanded more respect from Russia. Their unease over the war makes sense. Ukraine is a former Soviet state, just like them. So courting China makes sense, at least for now. It's not clear how Moscow will deal with this. Guess the response will have to wait until after the war.
Now, we're creatures of habit, at least most of us. We wake up at a certain time, have our morning tea or coffee, and get to work, and this pattern repeats day after day. But when it comes to healthy habits, the pattern doesn't seem to last. Do you wonder why? We all want to eat better, we all want to exercise more, we clearly have more help than ever before. Celebrities want us to try detox drinks and join the hippest fitness cult. The internet throws health tips around like confetti. We watch all of it, and honestly, it's a little exhausting. Turns out that's literally why we don't achieve a healthy lifestyle. And I'm not the one saying this. A new survey it says we're too tired to be healthy. And if you can relate to this story, it's for you. But even so, is there a way out? Our next report explores.
We all want to live longer. We want a fit body, glowing skin, an intelligent brain, healthy relationships, a good career, a life full of adventure. Seriously, the list is endless. Because we want this and we want that. We also know how to get it. Study after study tells us that a healthy lifestyle will help us achieve it all. There is data to prove that exercising is great and good food is more than good for us. We understand these facts, yet we kind of do the very opposite. Sorry for calling people out. The data agrees. 80% of adolescents and 27% of adults don't exercise enough. Let's put this another way. Worldwide, 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men don't exercise enough. About 5 billion people worldwide don't have a healthy diet. 39% of adults worldwide are obese. About 1/5 of the world population is depressed. We can continue, but you probably understand what we're getting at. The irony is, there is endless information on the perks of a healthy lifestyle. There are listicles, articles, videos, podcasts, and books on how to achieve it. And yet, this is where we stand. We just don't seem to be doing enough, even though we want to. Why is that? A new study has the answer. One that has probably been hidden in plain sight. It says we are simply too tired, and we lack the motivation. Yes, we are too tired to be healthy. We want it, but just not enough. This is based on a survey in which 38% of the respondents say they lack the motivation. 35% said they were too tired to chase a healthy life. And that tracks. Food prices are soaring across the world. Gym membership fees are increasing. And even if we can afford a healthy lifestyle, we never seem to have enough time. Cooking from scratch is tough, so we just order in. Hitting the gym after work is tougher, so we just decompress with the help of our good old friend Netflix. At the risk of over-intellectualizing this, let's remember that being lazy is not a sign of weakness. It's only natural. Our ancestors strived to be lazy so they could conserve energy. They rested so they could successfully struggle to survive. So we're wired that way. But the thing is, in this modern world, we don't need to be. We are stuck in a vicious cycle. Exercising and eating well will give us strength. But we don't seem to have the energy to do that in the first place. It's understandable, but something's got to give, right? We have to break the cycle somewhere. Nutritional science is debated endlessly, but the benefits of a healthy diet and regular exercise are well established. They're good for our physical and psychological well-being. They help us breathe better and sleep better. They make us live longer and better. They even increase our motivation levels. The only ask is that of breaking this cycle, and it's a big one. But we need to take that hard first step in the right direction, because as they say, if not now, then when?
Now let's look at the US. The Wuhan virus is gone, or we've learned to live with it, but it has left a different pandemic in its wake. Clinical depression. A new study finds that depression rates in the US are at record levels. In fact, depression has been on the rise across the world. In 2021, 4 in 10 adults worldwide said they face depression and anxiety. And the numbers just keep going up. But why is this happening? A simple answer is the pandemic and its aftermath. But there's a lot more to it. Our next report brings you the details. The American dream has turned into American depression. A new study says people in the US are more depressed than ever before. This is according to a Gallup survey. It says 29% of Americans have been diagnosed with depression at some point in their lives. That's 3 out of 10 Americans. The figure is 10 points higher than what it was in 2015. The number of people suffering depression is almost 18%. That's 1/6 of America, a staggering number. What explains this? The Wuhan virus pandemic. It brought not just death and suffering, but also crippling loneliness. People under lockdown were trapped at home, separated from their loved ones, and that took a toll. That trauma hasn't been completely processed yet. Many are still reeling from long-term depression. And the effects aren't spread evenly. Women have been affected disproportionately. Around 25% of American women are currently depressed. COVID-era job cuts targeted them more. Many had to quit their jobs to look after children and the elderly. Then there are the frontline workers. In 2019, about 80% of US healthcare workers were women. So more women experienced the horrors of the Wuhan virus up close. Watching so many people die is bound to have an effect. And while this study was on the US, the numbers around the world aren't any better. In 2020, about 20% of the people around the world said they had experienced depression. The numbers were the highest in Latin America, about 33%. 27% in Russia and Central Asia, 26% in Australia and New Zealand, 20% the world over, except East Asia, where only 9% of the people said that they faced depression personally. But that doesn't mean that Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan are exceptionally happy places. It just means that the stigma of talking about mental health issues runs high in this region. Increasingly, countries are trying to fix this, to destigmatize talking about depression. And the youth is leading the way. The world over, the youth are voicing their frustration. They're sick and tired and refuse to suffer in silence.
I would not want to leave. Everyone is here, my family, my companions, my friends. But in the last 2 years, I have caught myself thinking about it. There are days when my partner and I return from a 12-hour shift. We calculate what we made during these hours, as compared to the European countries, and I get depressed. I feel a sense of futility. That is the basic feeling, futility.
That's why almost all studies note that young people are the most depressed section of society, because young people talk about their mental health. And maybe that's the way forward. You can't fix a problem if you don't admit that it exists. And now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. We're starting with Turkey. A storm sent a sofa flying off a balcony of a high-rise building. In Cambodia, the 32nd Southeast Asian Games have been concluded with a spectacular closing ceremony. And the wreckage of the Titanic has been fully visualized in 3D for the first time ever. Also, what makes the 18th of May significant? We're taking you back in history on this day. NASA launched Apollo 10 mission. The year was 1969. The purpose of this mission was to cover all aspects of crewed lunar landing, except the landing itself. It was the first crewed Apollo spacecraft to operate around the moon. The mission also sent the first color TV pictures of the moon's surface to Earth. We're leaving you with this. Thanks for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
Helicopters radioed back. Welcome back to Earth. Billy Pugh is an old bosun, Norfolk, Virginia. Gene Cernan first, then John Young, then Colonel Stafford.
email exchanges from inside the BBC, they talk about the risk of violating Indian laws. It's easier to rake up the freedom of speech debate, but does it give anyone a free pass to knowingly violate the law? America supports India because it needs India's support in return. And India is working with the US because it suits India's interests. This is how geopolitics works. Last night, he diffused a crisis with his defense minister. But today, Netanyahu was confronted with a new problem. His cabinet seems to have rebelled against him. The UK is looking at the Indian subcontinent to fill its coffers. That India seems to be negotiating from a position of power, like a partner and not a former colony.